The strikes were over in hours, but the shockwaves traveled instantly. From Washington to Moscow, from Beijing to Brussels, from Riyadh to the United Nations in New York. The bombs fell in one region. The reactions came from everywhere. When the United States and Israel launched coordinated strikes on Iranian targets, the military phase was precise and limited. But geopolitically, nothing about it was small. Within minutes, emergency meetings were called. Ambassadors were summoned. Defense ministries activated crisis protocols. Newsrooms across continents switched to breaking coverage. At the United Nations headquarters, the Security Council chamber filled under urgent request. Diplomats sat beneath the mural that has witnessed decades of global confrontation. The question was not just what happened. The question was, what happens next? Russia's response came swiftly. Moscow condemned the strikes, calling them destabilizing and a violation of regional sovereignty. But behind the rhetoric lies deeper calculation. Russia maintains strategic ties with Iran, energy cooperation, arms transfers, and shared opposition to U.S. influence in parts of the Middle East. At the same time, Moscow is engaged elsewhere, carefully balancing commitments. Direct confrontation with the United States is not a step taken lightly. So, Russia signals disapproval, but it calibrates its response. China's position is quieter, but no less significant. Beijing emphasizes restraint, calls for de-escalation, urges dialogue. China's interest in the region is primarily economic: energy security, trade routes, stability in the Persian Gulf. A prolonged conflict threatens global markets and China's own growth trajectory. At the same time, Beijing watches closely. Every U.S. military action provides lessons about capability, about coalition coordination, about response times. In Europe, reactions are more divided. Some NATO allies reaffirm Israel's right to defend itself. Others stress the urgency of diplomacy. European leaders face domestic pressure, balancing alliance unity with fears of regional escalation, energy prices, migration concerns, economic stability. For Europe, the Middle East is never distant. It is interconnected. In Brussels, NATO consultations begin. Article 5 is not triggered. This is not an attack on alliance territory. But readiness discussions intensify. Air defenses are reviewed, intelligence sharing increases, naval patrols are monitored. The alliance posture shifts subtly, not toward war, but toward vigilance. In the Arab world, responses are complex. The Arab League calls for restraint. Public sentiment in many nations is volatile. Governments must navigate between strategic partnerships with Washington and domestic expectations of regional solidarity. Some Gulf states quietly increase defensive coordination with the United States. Others publicly emphasize neutrality. No capital wants to be the next flashpoint. And then there is Iran. Tehran's response is measured, at least initially. Statements condemn aggression. Warnings are issued. But full-scale retaliation carries risks. Striking U.S. assets directly could invite broader escalation. Instead, analysts watch for asymmetric responses: cyber operations, proxy networks, maritime pressure points. The Strait of Hormuz becomes a focal point of concern. Insurance rates for shipping rise. Oil markets fluctuate. The global economy reacts before armies move. In Washington, officials frame the strikes as limited and targeted. The stated objective: deterrence. Prevent escalation. Degrade capability. Signal resolve. The message is clear. This was not regime change, not an invasion, not an open-ended war. But whether that message is accepted globally depends on perception, and perception shapes stability. History shows that global wars often expand not from intent, but from miscalculation. In 1914, alliances escalated faster than diplomacy. In 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis nearly crossed the nuclear threshold until private communication prevented catastrophe. Today, communication channels remain open. Military hotlines exist. Back-channel diplomacy operates quietly. Intelligence agencies monitor not just actions, but intentions. So where does the world stand now? Not unified, not divided into rigid blocks, but cautious. The global reaction reveals something important. No major power has called for direct confrontation. No alliance has mobilized for full-scale war. Markets fluctuate, but they do not collapse. Flights continue, trade continues, diplomacy continues. The world is tense, but not yet tipping. The reality is this: modern geopolitics is a constant negotiation between power and restraint. Military capability exists, alliance systems are active, regional rivalries remain unresolved, but global leaders understand the cost of uncontrolled escalation. The reaction to the strikes is not just about Iran, it is about the balance of power. It is about signaling without spiraling. It is about showing strength without triggering catastrophe. The coming weeks will determine whether this moment becomes a footnote or a turning point. For now, the world watches, not with panic, but with calculation.